'Tis the season for basketball. I don't know. That's just been on my mind a lot lately as I'm coaching a basketball team once again, and we are also surrounded by March Madness. I got to spend some time this weekend taking in the games, and I don't really want to use all my time this week to talk about basketball, but it provides my lead-in. See, every NCAA tournament, there is what they call Cinderella teams. There's this huge underdog team that, for whatever reason, ends up winning their games. So this year, it was Fairleigh Dickinson. They knocked off the number 1 seed Purdue. And the second team is Princeton, the Princeton Tigers, a 15 seed. They not only won 1 game, but they won 2. They're actually going to be playing basketball games yet this weekend. And if they win 2 more games, they are in the Final Four as a 15 seed. But every year in March Madness, something I find that's really interesting that always draws me in is the words they use to describe the teams. Because yes, they use Cinderella. But if you watch the tournament, there's generally another story that they always talk about. And that is David and Goliath. They always use it as, here's this small team, this David team, the teams that just believe they could do it. And they defeat this mighty, giant, big college team, Goliath. But do they really understand the story? Do we really understand the story or remember what happened? Well, the story of David and Goliath shows up in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And the background is Goliath is 9 feet tall. He's this big dude. He's in the Philistine army. And every day for months, he is going out to God's people and he's challenging them. And no one wants to fight him. He's making fun of them. He's saying nasty things about God. He does this every single day. But no one is brave enough to fight him. Until one day, David is actually bringing food, things to his brothers. He's not even supposed to be there, and he hears what this guy is saying. And he hears what Goliath is saying about God. And to David, this will not stand. David volunteers to fight, and I think the leaders didn't know what to do. They're like, well, I guess, okay. So they try to slap all this big armor on David, and it doesn't fit. He's small. He's just a boy. But what is his history? How does he think he can do this? Well, David shares with them that, well, he's been a shepherd. He's killed these other big, large animals. But there's an important part that David always includes that's part of David's story. He says, I was able to defeat these large animals because of God. David never takes the credit for himself. So here's David. The armor doesn't fit, so he casts it off, and he is going head to head with this giant. But see, David knows something very important. David knows he's not going by himself. He knows that he is going with a giant far bigger than any Philistine or any Goliath or any huge, big, bad basketball team. He's got God on his team. So he goes to the Philistine. The Philistine's still talking smack and yelling at David. And David says, oh, no. I come in the name of the Lord. See, David, even though we look at him as this humongous big underdog, he's the creator of the world on his whole side. He has the God who can make and destroy and change anything. That is who is on David's team. So what happens? Well, of course, David gets his stones, his sling. He whips it up, throws it at Goliath, and what happens? Of course, it hits the giant right in the head. He falls, and the giant is defeated. But the truth is, if we really know the story, David was not an underdog. Yes, he was a kid. Yes, he was small. But David knew who was on his team. David knew he had the greatest player, the greatest titan, the greatest anything of all time. He had God. So this weekend, maybe you'll watch more basketball, and maybe another David team will defeat another Goliath team. But just remember the truth of the real story. David always had the biggest giant on his own team. He had God. And guess what? You also have that same God working in your life with you. So maybe you do have a Goliath. Maybe he's not a 9-foot giant, but maybe you have some fear, some anxiety, something that you are struggling with. Don't forget that you have God with you also. Now God's not a Band-Aid. He's not going to make anything perfect. But we have to remember when we go out, wherever we go, we have God with us always.